Well, there wouldn't be a person listening today who hasn't been subjected to a scam of some sort in the past week or so, and hopefully you haven't fallen for it. And as we become more alert to scams, so the scammers seem to be becoming more sophisticated. We have to be ever vigilant. A team of researchers from Macquarie University's Cybersecurity Hub has done some research into phone scams. Joining us now is Professor Dali Kaafar. Professor, good morning. Thanks for being with us today.
Good morning, Grant. Thanks for having me.
What prompted this research into scamming, or phone scamming in particular?
Oh, well, I think you mentioned this a little bit, Graeme. It's just, the fact that these scam calls are more and more sophisticated, and, we're just receiving every now and then one of those quite annoying scam calls trying, to get us in the trap. As Australians, I think we do receive on average about 5 to 6 scam calls per month. And we want to really to understand how the scammers, are playing on our emotions and playing those psychological tricks, and find out whether, they had some particular scripts or patterns that are leveraging to get us into the scam.
So what should we look out for? Because every call you get is not going to be a scam. So what are the warning signs?
Yeah, so that was this is exactly what the research shows. Basically, we looked into more than 300 scam calls as a sample, and we tried to implement, natural language processing techniques and AI techniques to find out patterns that would indicate, or at least, be a sort of early indication of scam calls. And sure enough, we found that the scammers really go through a very well identified script that may contain multiple patterns, but literally can be simplified in 4 different stages that could or should alert us on the fact that these are scam calls. The very first stage is really what we are calling the setup phase, or the introduction phase. And, this is pretty much what we all hear when we pick up the phone and start listening to those scammers that we identify sometimes very, very quickly. So we all probably have heard about these introduction, of the scammers kind of introducing the reason for the call with various sort of threats. And the interesting part here, Graeme, is that these introduction phases very, very often, if not always, come in a very aggressive and hostile way. That serious threat, probably kind of threatening us with legal actions or suspensions of a bank account, or, maybe even your network at home.
Yeah.
That's really the very first step. The second is a sort of assistant. This is actually where emotions kind of move a little bit from the scammer, towards a more polite way, more sort of social protocol being established between the scammer and their possible victims. They're trying to kind of use a rapport building type of conversation here. They position themselves as instructors, or sometimes, helping, providing even, step-by-step guidance sometimes towards navigating a particular website. This is where they basically ask you, can you open a browser for me? And, you go to that bar and you type in google.com and all of those sort of things. That's really where they're positioning themselves as very helpful. And this now should start alerting us on the possible scam. And then stage 3, and importantly, it's actually very interesting to note here that regardless of how the victims would be, reacting to things, stage 3 will always be, again, threatening the possible victim. So emotions here would ramp up again at this stage, and the scammer would really reinforce that threat of non-compliance to whatever they're up with. Talking over their victims sometimes, right? They don't want to listen to the questions, or, to the sort of skepticism that is in front of them. And all they want is really to get you to that element of time pressure, preventing you from thinking this through, right? And stage 4 is obviously the ultimate phase for them, where, they're expecting payment, or they're expecting really that you have downloaded that malicious software. The conversation becomes very, very less organized at this stage, because the scammers are really interested in getting you to do that action and, finish the call. And obviously sometimes kind of promising to call back, which obviously never happens.
Yeah. With some of the scammers, and I think you've covered it, they will ask you to download an app for your phone or something like that. What happens if you do download an app like that? What happens?
Yeah, so this is a very typical one, right? So they'll probably be trying to get you to install remote control type of software, or even sometimes malicious software without you realizing it. So most of the time, these are actually software they install, so they take over your computer, right? So they take over your device in a sense. They will actually be able to access your device just as you would using it physically. And this is very often leading to ransomware attacks. So what will happen literally from their end after you install that particular malicious software is very likely for them to go and encrypt your whole device, right? And then, ring you the next day saying, oh, here's what is happening. If you want to get access to your data or to your device, now you have to pay ransomware. So that's a very initial step of almost every ransomware type of activity that you would see people falling for.
How did you conduct the research into scammers? Did you virtually have to pose as a victim?
Oh, well, this is actually interesting because if you go on, online, you'd see a series of scam calls published publicly on, YouTube or others, where people would have recorded some conversations with, very real scammers, and people would actually be just playing the game with the scammers, pretending to fall for their scam. So these are called scam baiters. And there's a wide variety of those scam calls or scammer baiters calls published online. So we did actually collect more than 1,000 of those, and we sort of sampled them and sort of cleaned that data, making sure that we do have access to various categories of scammers, talking about different topics and approaching different subjects. But it's a real fun actually if you have the time to have a listen to one or two scam baiters conversations.
What advice would you have for people? Because we're all going to be subjected to scammers, and some people have been trapped and they're so embarrassed by it they don't say anything about it. But if you think you've been scammed or have been scammed, what should you do?
So the very first thing I think to realize, Graeme, is that we could all fall for some of these tricks. Just if we are not really in that sort of mood to make the right decisions, or sometimes we are just not paying enough attention. Yeah. We all have those days, right? I think the very important advice is to understand that if we're receiving some of these calls that are coming in an aggressive or hostile way from any call really about any topic, whether it's really from your bank or from your telecommunication operator or from maybe a tax office or government agency type of official, very rarely you'd end up talking to some official in such a hostile and aggressive way. So the very initial reaction to those would be, all right, hang on, mate, I'll call back your organization that you're calling from. And to always make sure that, first of all, probably to not continue that conversation, of course, but to maybe have a check online of the exact number that you'd like to reach out to for that organization, right? So if it's really a call that is pretending to be coming from your bank, well, first of all, you hang up, have a look online on the exact contact number. Don't use that one that they used to call you from, obviously, and then ring back your bank and check whether there's something wrong or not. In the vast variety and the vast majority of the cases, there will be absolutely no issue at all. And your bank or the other institution would literally, be in a position to confirm that they never called you. And that's really a scam that just happened.
I guess the first line of defense always is to, if you're in any doubt at all, assume it is a scammer and do the checks with your bank or any organisation like that. Professor, thanks so much for your time today. That's Professor Dali Kaafar from the Macquarie Uni Cyber Security Hub.